tired of Zoom, but how it's wonderful. It's so much easier to get together. I'm in the city. I know Yvonne sometimes struggles with work. You know, it's just great to be able to do this. And I wanted to start off by just thanking so much Steph and Aoife for putting together a terrific pack of materials. In the last few years, there's much to doing about binders and tabs and all kinds of stuff. And then out came this beautiful virtual pack. And so thank you both for all your organizing. It made it a dream. Okay.
And I wish I'd just gotten the workbook to you sooner. Sorry, everyone.
No, there's no buts. It was amazing. So thanks too. Okay, so let's, our first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda and see if there's any late items to be introduced.
Not late discussion items, but for the revised agenda package, I will include Bobby's resignation acknowledgement from council.
Yes.
So.
And let's say if we have time at the end, maybe we can have at least a preliminary discussion while it's wildly fresh in our heads about what how we might want to adjust criteria, just to Michelle's point. Yeah. Okay. But agreeing we're not going to go past the agreed time.
I only have to 12:15, my friend, so I won't be in for that last bit.
12:15?
That's all I have today.
Okay, Yvonne, let's get to it, dude.
Yes,
okay,
could I add my voice to that as well? I'm always right. It's 11 o'clock, and I were hoping we could take these decisions by midday.
Okay, well, let's get into it, team, and maybe based on that, why don't we leave the criteria questions for later? And what I'll do is make sure that we elicit people's comments after this meeting while it's fresh. So with no further ado, do we need a motion to approve? I guess we do need a motion to approve today's agenda.
Mm-hmm. I first, second, whatever.
So Penny, and seconded by Michelle. Next item is to adopt the minutes of the last meeting where I just failed to show up due to my own mistake. So we've got those attached. Would anyone like to move? Oh, help me, people.
Yeah, I'll move.
Yvonne's in and Penny's following her.
This is not, I think that's the last one was, you did show up. We had a Zoom one before.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I was so there and responsible and fabulous the entire time. So number 3 on our list is public comments. As far as I know, we haven't received any public comments. Okay. And now we get to the good stuff, team. So reviewing and discussing the grant applications. And just for the benefit of anyone who happens to, are people going to be able to review this recording, Steph?
Yes.
Okay. So just for the benefit of those who might be attending with us or reviewing this later, what the committee has in front of it is a summary of the 7 grant applications and also a summary of all the organizations who've received community grants and grants in aid over the last 5 years. So we're looking at that history as we go. And with no further ado, let's get to it. What we have done in the past and we've done this time is to each individually and without talking to the others, provide our respective scores based on the criteria for the 7 applications. And at the moment, those are being compiled. It's extremely helpful for us to look at those scores, but they are not by any means determinative of the outcome. It's just to give us all a sense of where we are. And I'm going to be guided by you, Aoife. Can we go ahead and look at Caring Circle and then you'll provide us with numbers? How do you see that working?
Give me another 5 minutes. I'll be able to email you guys back the combined workbook.
Fantastic. Okay. So
can you do a song and dance for 5 minutes there, Missy?
Yeah, well, I could. But I'm just wondering, because I'd love to get into it, but it's hard to do that without our numbers. Go, Michelle.
I wondered, just because this is my first time through this process, whether it might be useful to have a very brief chat about institutional precedent in terms of funding when there is a shortage of funds, as there often is, and there is this year, do we tend to try to give all people that we consider worthy a partial grant, or try to give as much money as we can to highly ranked grants? Or are there
Yes, yes,
types
and
of
yes. It
precedents?
really, I think what you'll see, Michelle, is it really depends. We tend to talk through them, and sometimes there's an application that we decide is a bit undercooked, or may not be the right fit for this granting program, or maybe isn't the right grant for this time. And today we're thinking COVID, right? We're thinking about community response. And so once we decided those who deserve our support, if we can do it, then we figure out how to allocate. And sometimes it's a matter of, if there's all 7 are worthy, then we just decide to spread it evenly across all 7. Sometimes we get a little more creative. I know but it always turns out beautifully, if I may say. Yeah.
Okay, that's super. Thank you. That helps. And as a follow-up question, one of the things I puzzled over as I was reading these is we did indicate a preference for COVID-related projects, and we did receive a number that were really just for operational costs for ongoing organizational support that really didn't address COVID meaningfully. And maybe it would be useful before we start talking about details if we want to explore that a little bit. Do we want to prioritize COVID-related projects, or do we want to just have that be kind of one of the pieces in the mosaic of what we're talking about? Or do we want to really look at continuing to fund core organizations on the island that need the support, whether or not they put in a COVID piece?
What do you think?
Well, we had the long, drawn out and agonizing conversation in our last meeting about whether we would give the money back to the municipality and even run a grant program this year. And we finally decided we would, because we thought organizations might be out there who would be able to do a COVID-related response coming from the community that the municipality may not have a good fit for. And that was kind of ultimately what tipped our scales in deciding to even do this competition. I was a little bit surprised myself to see how few of the applications that came in really did focus on that. And so I guess
I just wanted to intervene there because I feel the exact opposite, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I really felt reviewing these applications, and I'd be interested in what others think. There's a sort of there's an urgency to some of these applications, and the impact of them, the gravity of them. I'm feeling it more than I normally would, argue almost all but I think one really do touch on COVID response to some degree. I don't know, maybe we should just talk through it. Penny, what do you think?
There was only
or
2.
Yvette, yeah, or sorry, Yvonne.
There was really only 2 for me that like the light up for Bowen, and I get it, because I they would look at it differently. And then the governance platform thing, I can't remember.
The Health Foundation.
But I think what we have to remember is a lot of these organizations, because they're operating all the time, they're looking at their operational costs, and they're thinking about from a place of sustainability based on the COVID. So they're not,
and community resiliency.
They're coming at it from that perspective. They're not. It may not look different from what they asked for last year, because they provide service regardless of whether we're in a pandemic or not, and they just know that their operational budgets are taking a bigger hit this year. So they're trying to figure out where they can get in to make sure that what they've got in place can remain in place. And if they can do more, that is awesome, but they're just trying to hold the status quo. That was my interpretation.
Yeah. Michael or Penny, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I like the point made. If you take Light Up the Cove, it's really hard for that organization. I think they brought a great deal of joy, frankly, to the island last year. There's only so much they can talk about COVID. So I think it's fair enough, but I've got to be honest, I had to largely set aside when I looked at Light Up the Cove, I didn't look at it from a COVID point of view. I looked at it upon its merits, as same as any other year, because there's only so much they can say. And unless they're going to start dreaming up stuff or putting stuff in for the sake of it, I just think it's viewed on its merits. And if it can't be COVID, there's nothing they can do to manufacture it. And they shouldn't.
Thanks, Michael. Penny?
Well, they could make COVID costumes, little droplets that could fly around with the fairies.
Everybody would be so
Thanks,
depressed.
Yvonne. I was hoping to hear from Penny.
On that note, Santa masks would be good. But yeah, no, I agree with the sentiment that all of them, not all of them, but most of them had an element of responding from a financial standpoint. It does sort of beg the question overall, though, that not to be answered here, that so many of these organizations rely on this grant for core funding, or seem to rely on this grant for core funding.
I agree.
Which makes me realize it would have been a real shame to hold it entirely for COVID response. So that's interesting itself, but I don't have anything more to add than that.
Okay. Look at Aoife freaking out, getting her numbers in. She's so good.
Sorry, really annoying tapping on mute.
No. What we've done in the past is once the numbers come up, we can just take a look at them. And then what's often helpful is to look at the lowest scores and just talk through those quickly and then move our way up. Yeah. To decide who's in the running for the pot. Yvonne, are you at home?
I am. I'm in the farm. I'm upstairs.
Nice. I'm in my office for the second day, and it's weird. I'd rather be home. I'm so set up there. Yeah.
I think if Yvonne's missing.
You need a bit of both. I think you need a little bit of, I like the fact that you can work, you can do some chunk from home, but I also think that there's some value when it gets back up to speed, doing a little bit of face-to-face. So I hope most employers do a combination of work from home, because
and that's what most of my employers want to do, like a little bit of both. I just want to open my window right now. There's no birds, there's no nothing, it's weird. Yeah. Okay. Da 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 da.
I think you should sing, Yvonne. You said you missed concerts.
No, I said all my concerts have been canceled right now.
So here's an opportunity.
No. Just crack me up. That's a little sad. But what do you do? What do you do?
Did everyone who completed the spreadsheet?
I didn't do the spreadsheet. I just did the sheet thingies.
That's okay.
That's all I did, and then sent that through.
Okay. There was a thing on the spreadsheet that I loved that we haven't done in the past, which basically asked, how would you divide the money, I think. I found that really helpful. Did you do that? Yeah, Michelle, it looks like you did.
I did, yeah. That was an interesting exercise because it was allowed sort of reality to kick in. Like, as much as you might like some or all of them, the reality is there's a really finite pot, and so you have to kind of make it work, and that means sort of cutting in places you might not otherwise like to do, which was interesting.
I added those numbers to the bottom of the evaluation sheet when it had a little score in the side pocket, and then it said your final score, and in the final score I just said I would allot this amount of money.
Okay, good. So we'll be able to look at that.
Just so that I didn't have to, I'm like, what, more forms? Oh my God. Okay, wait a minute. I'll just throw it here.
So that's those numbers were something you guys usually arrive at during the meeting. So it was interesting for Aoife to put that forward as a starting point. That was Aoife's idea. That's good.
Just an interesting note, I've just been through a very similar process up on Cortez Island, where I was sitting at the table as a nonprofit with a group of nonprofits, deciding on how to allocate. I didn't have a proposal in, but how to allocate a $25,000 grant in aid between 10 nonprofits who put proposals forward. And they ended up doing just that, like averaging basically every nonprofit had a vote and allocated dollars of the fixed amount, and it got averaged out. and then nonprofits who had put proposals in had to take those funds and restructure their proposal.
Oh, wow.
on the
Okay.
event.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying it was like it's an interesting process, and to look at each of us allocating, of which I didn't do today. So my numbers won't be averaged out.
I feel like we should use this time for something, you guys.
You have the spreadsheet now. You guys all have it in your
Got the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's out.
Oh,
And then I
Okay.
can share a screen if you want, or would people like that? Share.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Because when you pull it up on your computer, it takes more than the whole space. So you're going
This
back.
might have a similar effect, but we'll see.
Okay.
Is that
This is good.
okay?
I like it.
That's good.
I'm just going to get it up on my other computer.
I think it speaks to my dodgy lifestyle that I get very nervous when I start sharing my computer with other people. Are you on the right one?
So if I may just speak for a second, when you add up all of the recommended dollar values, it comes up to more than the pot, just because there was some recommendations came back, just didn't stick strictly to the exact pot, but it's still a good indicator as to who we think should get what as a group, or who you think should get what.
So we're looking at averages, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Aoife, do you think it might make more sense for you? Like you share the screen and that way you can be working on the document live?
Yeah, I can do, yeah.
Okay, sorry guys.
I'm working with Steph.
Yeah.
I'm just working on a shorter summary screen as well. I just wanted to get that particular one to you so you could pick off the discussion. So if you want, I can work on a smaller abbreviated version.
I'll go back to sharing this then. And
So has everybody got the spreadsheet in front of them? Oh, here, we all do, I guess. The challenge, of course, is then we can't see each other.
Well, you
All
can
right.
decide.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go with this screen. I wonder if looking at the scores, the cumulative scores, there's the three that are fairly well below the others are, I'm gonna look at my proper screen. Sorry. Island Pacific, Light Up, Bowen, and Bowen in transition. So why don't we start with those three and talk about those on their merits. Should we start with Island Pacific as the lowest?
then you're recusing.
Yes. Can I facilitate the discussion?
Oh,
Or do I just stay quiet?
I think you can facilitate the discussion.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. My struggle is my screen's quite small. Okay. So Island Pacific, 19.6. Who wants to talk about their scores or thoughts on this application?
Well, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, okay. So I thought that the IPS did one of the better jobs of being very specific and in a very detailed way in a COVID response application. So it was talking very specifically about measures they needed to take in order to make the campus safe again for students to return in the fall, and in order to make the education affordable and available to all ongoing students on Bowen through better financial aid. And so I liked that about them. In general, I rated this one fairly highly myself, although, yeah, I did have some second thoughts about whether they as an independent institution had as much need as some of the other organizations on the island.
I think one thing it's important to note, it's just a fact, in case some of you don't know, is the makeup of Island Pacific. It maxes out at 72 students, and about half of those are students from off island, from West Vancouver, North Vancouver. So, yeah.
For me, when I looked at it, I'm like Michelle. I felt the what they contributed was on point. it spoke to the COVID, but like Michelle, I gave them a fairly higher rating because I also recognize that they have a huge sponsorship component for kids that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford the program, but would very much benefit from the program. So, you know, I was leaning more in that realm, knowing that there would be for sure more people in that boat of requiring some sort of financial assistance to support an alternative learning style, and how critical that would be during this time.
Okay, Penny?
Yeah, my challenge, I mean, I agree. It was very much COVID response, and that's what we asked for, and the challenges that they are going to face in light of COVID are very real. So in that perspective, I really want to support it. My challenge continues to be when I look at the first criteria of, does this benefit all of Bowen Island? I think that it still remains a select group who can afford to send, even with the sponsorships, who can afford to send their kids there. But then I also balance that with the community outreach work they do, the fact they're a major employer. So yeah, they weren't the lowest or the highest on mine. So in my rating.
Michael, did you want to jump in?
Please. I've got to be honest, I maybe looked at it slightly different. I looked at kind of at the funds available and at the community as a whole. And to be honest, well, obviously I'm going to be honest, but I looked at the people whom I thought we just had to support to the same level, which were Caring Circle and Family Place. And because of their community impact. And then I looked at, the presentation was excellent, I couldn't fault it, but I just had to say, wait a second, certain amount of dollars, which has the most general community impact, and which ones do look to us really earnestly for support. And I took the school off my list entirely. It just didn't match up with the most basic principles. If we'd had a lot of more money, of course, it's a good presentation. No one can argue the facts, but I just didn't see it in the scheme of things.
Any other thoughts? It is extremely hard to be quiet, but I'm managing.
I just want to speak a little bit to what Michael just said. I appreciate that position around when you're looking at comparing and we have such limited funding. But I also want to make mention that, some of the folks that are longstanding recipients, like Family Place, one of the pieces within the evaluation criteria is around creating some sustainability on their own. And Family Place has really struggled to do that. So, I think, as much as I recognize that there are some longstanding core programs that need that additional support, if we're going to look at what are they doing to create some sustainable opportunities for themselves, I think that needs to be held in merit also, so that we're more in line with what with what the entire process is asking us to do.
Yvonne, how does that relate to Island Pacific?
In terms of sustainability? Well, yeah. I mean, for me, when I looked at some of the numbers in terms of their outreach, trying to have a donor, an alumni network, a donor base, trying to draw on that. I'm a big proponent of that for any nonprofit, and I might be skewed on that because I run a nonprofit. But your greatest availability to reach out to create an opportunity for more of a consistent, sustainable money base coming in, whatever that is about creating a donor base, an alumni base, having some structures in place where you can set benchmarkable structures and goals that that are achievable on an annual basis, and you're using those folks. A school has a really strong opportunity to do that because they create alumni, and alumni, you know, depending on how well the kids have experienced and the parents have experienced, will look to support a school and will look to generate. I think Family Place could do the same thing, as I think so could the Children's Center. I don't know that it's often something that they look at, but it's probably something they should be looking at moving in the future, because the funding pot just gets smaller and smaller, and there's more squirrels running to one nut. And eventually there's not going to be a nut left, and everybody's going to be left going, now what do we do? So,
well, I think what's fair to say is that the funding is going more and more to core funding. So this sort of.
Well, I'm speaking generally across the board, like all nonprofits that are looking.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
That there's just more and more reaching out, and the funding across the board, wherever you're looking to get it from, is becoming harder and harder to get. So when you can access availability, like when you can access other resources that you have internally that you just haven't been thinking about, and looking to try to maximize on that, I think that's important.
Okay, so that's in favor of this application from your perspective, yeah?
I would want to give them something, absolutely.
So one of the things that nobody's spoken to at this point, I'm just looking through the questions. Number 4, meeting a community need. Does anyone want to talk to that?
Well, I thought I did.
I mean, I can
talk about sponsorship.
Okay.
I think we can also add that they are they're attempting through this to meet the needs to support local Bowen families with enough financial aid to allow their children to continue their education. And they're also hoping to be able to open the school safely, which was allowing local families to be able to attend the school. So it's not the entire community writ large, but it's a subsection of the community that will be affected by this.
Okay.
I think also they support alternative learning. So on a small island, we're pretty fortunate to have that resource. But and my biggest challenge though is that it's just not community wide. It's
not what, Penny? Sorry?
It's not community wide. It's not accessible to all of the community. So I agree with Yvonne, where she says I believe we should have some funding for IPS, but that needs to be weighted out with the other.
Just before maybe we need to move on to another one, and before we circle back, but I can't believe I just said circle back. What a cliche. But sorry, team. If I'm hearing what you're saying, there's an appetite for some funding, not all funding. Is your thinking around one or the other of the requests? So there's the request for safety equipment, COVID safety equipment in the building, and the other request is financial aid. Is there one or the other, or is it just a blend?
I would support financial aid if it was for Bowen Island families.
I would agree with that. I think any organization, any business, anything, community organization who's reopening has to come up with a safe opening protocol. And so organizations across the island are going to be doing that with resources that they have on hand or not. But one of the things that makes this application special, I think, is the financial aid request to really try to make the finances work for families in need. And to me, that's an important part.
Okay. So if it's okay, I wonder if do we want to leave that now and come back to money later?
That's what we've done in the past. We do the initial conversations and then at the end go back with money.
Thanks, Steph. Okay, so the next one, Bowen in transition, is the next lowest. I'm keen to speak to this one myself. I gave this a fairly low score of 21. And in part, I admit, my thinking was shaped by the really urgent, specific needs of the caring circle, of the health center, operating costs for terrific community resources that need to keep going through these tough times. And, you know, Bowen in Transition has done some amazing work, but for me, you know, updating a brochure that's a really good summary of resources available didn't land as urgently for me. Anybody else? Michelle, did you want to comment?
I agree with that largely, although I guess my, on a slightly flip side on that was that this was the other one that had, for me, the strongest, like, we are responding to a need that is being generated by the current COVID times. And we are trying to find ways to put all of the different resilience information under one umbrella and make it as accessible as possible to everybody. And while I wouldn't fund them at their full request, I think that that's probably a good idea. That have, I mean, if you've been involved at all with any of the sort of trying to find things and what's happening on Bowen right now and who's open and who's closed and what's being changed, and it's pretty hard to find a lot of that. And if they're able to be a little bit more of an umbrella for that, that seems like that's a service that's worth pursuing in these times.
Anyone else?
I'm on.
Yeah, I thought, keep talking over each other. I thought, I'm sorry, I can't see you, Yvonne. But yeah, I thought the Bowen in Transition was responsive to COVID, I think, and community resiliency. I think that actually finding ways, the way we respond now can actually build our resources and our on-island resources for the future. And you know, my sort of philosophical piece around COVID is that this is also an opportunity of finding new ways, better ways to work as a community. So I actually really appreciate the resource, and I rated them fairly high.
Yvonne? Can't see you either.
Yeah, I'm on the Michelle train. I agree with Michelle.
But it's good. Okay, great.
Andrea, sorry, do you have the people like down on the right side or left side of your screen,
Yeah.
like vertical? So if you put your mouse down at the bottom, it's got a little triangle arrow, and you can click on that to scroll through the people.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yep.
Okay.
One of my concerns with this one too was, unlike so many of the others, there wasn't a lot, there didn't strike me as being a huge number of volunteers. Okay. So Yvonne, you're with Michelle on this, and Michael, lastly, how about you?
No, I'm afraid I went back to the harsh reality of so many dollars. How do we make it effective? I think there's a risk between trying to please and give something to everybody and making the amounts so small, and they're pretty small anyway sometimes, that they don't really have a great deal of meaning. So I'm afraid I took the rather harsher approach of saying, no, I looked at it, others compared to their merits, and whilst the presentation was fine,
Yes, it was.
I eliminated it from my thinking.
I admit I did too. Yeah. So it's tough, this one. Okay. I think I wasn't clear. It looked like this brochure was going to be updated and put online, but maybe okay. I feel like there's so much information around being updated daily, but okay. So the group decided collectively, it really looks like a compromise. Some funding this and some probably, like Michael and I, not looking to fund. So there's this compromise amount of $975 we're left with. Let's leave that there for the moment. And last but not least, light up Bowen. Yeah, which is what we should have done in the very first place. I think I got that wrong. Light up Bowen. Who'd like to start this discussion?
I think you should just call out names. It makes it easier because then we jump on top of each other.
Okay, how about you, Yvonne?
God's sakes.
You're welcome.
Yeah. You know, I'm one of those different ones, Michael. I sort of took a look at everybody to try and figure out what we could do, but making sure that the big ticket folks, the folks that were asking for 10 or 15, did get a huge chunk of that money. And then some of the littler folks did get something. Like Light Up for Bowen, you know, I get what they're doing. It's a hard place for me because I do all the lights at the Little Red Church, and you know, we do all of that for free. So I look at this a little differently, although, and the other piece for me that I really struggled with is that they've got a whole section in their budget to pay their coordinators, and yet in their volunteer time, they kind of list their coordinators. So I was like, okay, what's going on with that? But I also recognize that in this time of whatever this time is, something that can bring a community together in some shape or form without, you know, this is the other piece. I don't even know what that's going to look like come December. I don't know if we're going to be allowed to have 1,000 people congregate down in the cove doing whatever. I don't know what that's going to be. So I looked at giving them, you know, a little bit of money, but I would be one of those ones that would take that money off the table to give to another organization. Not that I'm trying to be cruel or mean, but I'm just looking at the fact that we have no idea what it's going to look like by December. There's all these hopes of opportunity, but what I do know is that Dr. Bonnie H. has clearly stated that there will be no large gatherings, so no rock concerts, no festivals, no arena things until there's an actual vaccine. So if that's the case, then to me, Light Up Bowen is going to be very, very different. And maybe the costs associated with it would also not be as high. I'm just saying.
Well, and I'd love to riff on that because I had the same thought that without that particular evening where the whole community comes together, which is very unlikely to be happening in the same way, what you have is a beautifully decorated village, which we all love, that is meant to kind of, you know, enhance the look and feel of the place and hopefully bring visitors and make it an appealing place to be. And I that to me was kind of beyond the scope. But more than that, I feel that it's just not the year for more Christmas lights. We have lots of lovely Christmas lights, and there might be other years where we want to replace old ones or do new stuff. But in a year where there's so many troubles and where we're trying to get a health center up and other things, I just feel it feels inappropriate this year from my perspective. Yeah. Penny and Michelle, how about you, Michelle?
Felt that way exactly. I just exactly the same thing. I think I liked Light Up. I'm new to the area, so Light Up Bowen this last December was my first. I thought it was cheerful and fun and lovely, and the you know, the dark comes very early and it lasts very long here, and it was nice to have the lights up everywhere. But this is not the year to shoot the moon and go for the biggest, bestest, brightest, most festival, build structures, have events, have activities kind of year. I think we need to tone it down and really focus on the essential this year. And while and you know, they got something like $2,000 from this grant last year, and they wanted 10 this year. I just don't think that makes sense. And I think, you know, we should fund them comparable to what has been funded in the past, more or less, to make sure that there's enough of an infrastructure to make some of the lights go up and have it be cheerful against the dark, but not have it be a whole extravaganza in terms of expansion.
Just to be clear, though, what's being asked for is just adding new stuff. It's not covering, that's what I understand from.
I understood from the budget that they wanted to buy a bunch of new stuff and build a structure and hire installers to come and do a professional installation, and they have a whole bigger vision this year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Although every year the application laments the challenge that there's really two key people who do most of it.
Sure.
And they have, you know, in terms of the installing piece, corralling volunteers to make that happen is something they've struggled to do and make it sustainable. Yeah. Penny and Michael, we haven't heard from you.
I think the argument was a good one. Well, not the argument. The point was a good one. Maybe this isn't the year. Look, maybe you could make the amount. It brought a lot of joy and life last year, and we might be looking forward to something more like that at this time. So if you would be good enough, maybe to bequeath them the same roughly as you did in the previous year, and I'm just looking at that. It was just I think 2,700 and something, somewhere around about that, or 3,000. To me, I think we could move on because the point made that this is not the year to go ballistic, but it is probably a good year to show some support. So at that middle ground.
Why show some support, Michael?
What, to light up Bowen?
Well, they already have a lot already. I guess I feel really strongly about this, that it's not will there be light up Bowen or not, it's will we have more stuff.
Well, I think that what they're trying to do is to grow it. I think that they're trying to add to it, I know it was well received last year, and it was pretty much enjoyed by the community. And as you say, who knows how that's going to work this year? But I wouldn't like to see them written out. I think they've had a. It's something in progress, and I'd like to see it encouraged. And if it's going to grow slowly this year, so be it. But I'd hate to not recognize it.
Well, it's just what who else you're going to trim in order to buy more Christmas lights. Penny, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually think that it's just what we need. As far as the lights, I agree that we won't be like Bonnie Henry said, we won't be gathering groups of more than 50 people. So I don't think we'll see it, but I think for the kids to show some lights and some Christmas spirit. I also think the other part, they also rely a fair bit on sponsorship. And I think a lot of our retail and business community are going to be hurting this year and won't necessarily be in the position to fund that. So I would advocate for covering the salaries, or certainly meeting where we were last year in the grant.
So where can you guys point to where in the application we get a sense of what we'd be contributing to? Because I'm not sure I see that. So if there's a bit of money given, what's that going to?
Well,
I think they've given us an overall budget.
Yeah, the tough thing about this budget is that they say that they want $10,000 from us, and then they list thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of expenses, but they don't really say what any given request is going to be tied to in terms of what's going to come from sponsorship and what's coming from us and what's coming from fundraising and what's coming from donations.
Well, I also feel I have to note they didn't apply for a community foundation grant because they were late. I mean, there's not a strong volunteer component here or attempts to raise funds in other ways, raise granting funds in other ways. Maybe we should go to the criteria themselves.
I disagree. They do a lot of sponsorship raise, so that takes time for Basha and Joel to go to various business partners and ask for that. And then there's the volunteers who help put up the lights. And in the past, there's been volunteers who have helped with the parade. So I'd say it's a highly volunteered, supported event. I know that there's always a struggle with getting volunteers out for it, but they've managed to put it on every year and grow it bigger and more, more exciting every year. And I agree, it's not a year to support the growth, but it's certainly a year to support the event.
So, and sorry to come back to this, where do we see that? I see the list of the wish list, I think, but where is the supporting the event?
I'm not in the document right now, so I'll go out and look at it.
sorry, Eve is asking me before. I thought we had 2 hours, everybody. I'm really sorry. So,
Sorry, Andrew, you do have 2 hours, just to be clear. The agenda went out. It's a 2-hour meeting and it was said to end at 1 o'clock.
It's just me. I can't stay till 1.
I get that. I'm concerned that we're going to be skimming over these pretty quickly. Okay, so Andrea, before we lose committee members, Aoife says, can we ask if they're in agreement with the overall rankings and range of dollars? So Michael, you must leave at 12:15 as well?
You know, I got to be honest with you. I really didn't think it would take us this long to go through this, and you don't want to steamroller over everyone's
No,
opinion.
we don't. These typically take a couple of hours. They're important applications to these people. Yeah, I'm a little stressed that everyone's wanting to, or not everyone. If you're not able to come, we might have to if you need to go as well, Michael, I'd be more comfortable if we had a second meeting, I think.
Let me hold on for a little bit longer and see how we go. I'm awfully sorry. Maybe we're all become a culprits lately of being zoomed out. In the last week, I have spent on average about 7 to 8 hours a day.
Yes, I know, Michael. And I don't mean to cut you off. I think most of us have, but
Yeah.
It doesn't diminish the fact that this is a really important discussion. So maybe it's worth having a pause. I mean, if Yvonne's leaving in 12 minutes and you're advocating to do that as well, I don't think there's any hope that we can come to any good conclusions here in the next 12 minutes. Do we
Sorry,
want
guys,
to?
my work stuff came up and I tried to flip it out and I couldn't.
It's totally fine, but I just think
if it wasn't work.
not for a second do I want to rush through this. Aoife.
Sorry, I was just trying to get an overall, before anyone had left. Sorry, Andrea, I was just trying to see if we could get an overall general agreement if we're heading in the right direction for those people before they would exit the meeting. You're right, it's a 2-hour meeting. And sorry, I wasn't trying to rush anything. I was just trying to see if we were in the overall ballpark.
No, but it's good because it's raised the issue. If we don't have another full hour to go through these,
No, hon.
I think it's not worth it, to be honest.
Okay, can we reschedule something? We still have, we're slotted to go in the next council meeting. That was a tight turnaround anyways. Maybe we can extend to the council meeting after that and try to fit another session in next week to discuss the grants.
Well, why don't we're all here and incentivized to find a second time. So let's do it together now, shall we?
Okay, yep. So today is a Friday. I only need 5 days. Well, actually, we don't need any days. So next week is clear for committees, except for like around 9:30 to 11:30 is tight. Everything else is open.
I have pretty good availability next week. How about, do you want to chuck something out at us, Steph?
Sure. So what about Tuesday at 1 o'clock?
Anyone who cannot do 1?
I have an hour then, but no more than an hour. I have to go in another meeting.
So what about Tuesday at 12 o'clock and we can have our sandwiches?
I can't do 12. I'm in a clinical meeting from 11 to 1.
Okay. How about Monday at 10?
If it's 2 hours, I can't.
Can we do 90 minutes?
I can't do Monday at 10.
So 90 minutes would probably work since we actually have all the criteria now. We've done a bit of preliminary discussion. How about Monday
Anytime Wednesday?
4?
Which day?
Monday at 4?
Yeah.
No, sorry. I work on another time frame with Asia, and that's just about their waking up time for me.
Okay.
Is there a good time of day for you, Michael?
No, it's really totally opportunistic. It's the day and the date, and I'm looking at next week, and I'm going, okay, let's maybe is there a certain day which is easier next week? Because it's usually one week isn't necessarily like the next week.
So what about Thursday at noon?
You mentioned, hang on, if we can go back to
Yeah.
Penny?
sorry. I was trying to say, if you go back to Tuesday at 1 o'clock, if everyone else can make it for 90 minutes, I can move my meeting. I just checked it out.
Or Tuesday at 12 o'clock?
I can't do Tuesday at 12.
No, she can't do
Okay, well, let's
12.
do,
But you can do one? You can do one?
I'll come in late because I'm finishing a meeting around 1, but I can come in late.
1:30.
I could probably do 1:10, 1:15.
I'm going to have to bail on Tuesday. That's just a
Okay.
no-go for me.
Oh,
So did we do Wednesday at 3?
I can.
Ah, I got one.
Yes.
This is like
3.
guacamole.
Michael?
Yeah, that looks free.
Wednesday.
At the moment.
What did I
Yeah.
say? Shoot.
Wednesday at 3.
Monday
Okay.
at 3.
Okay,
And
yes,
let's-
Michelle.
I'd love to suggest that we try to, you can't do it, Michelle?
No.
Oh, you can. So if we try to, let's try to do it in an hour, but I'd love us to have 90 minutes,
No.
just in
Yeah,
case.
I don't want to say an hour, guys. We've done, this is my 5th time doing this meeting. It's been 3 or 4 hours. We're not doing it an hour. This is, council has asked this committee to properly go through these applications and give them recommendations based on a thoughtful approach.
Yeah, the thing is, this year there's less applicants, I think, than prior years due to COVID. So I think if we should, I don't know if anyone's in agreement with this, but maybe we should continue some of the conversation now once people have a little bit more time, maybe another 30 minutes, get to a point that we can make the next meeting as brief as possible. Does that help?
Well, Yvonne's got 7 minutes.
Yeah, I don't mind talking as long as we can, and then you know, having at least we've had a dialogue. So next week, 90 minutes, whatever long we need, we can be more pushy through.
If we've got 7 minutes, you know, what's really struck me, because I feel quite strongly, much as I love Light Up Bowen and Basha and all that stuff, I feel quite strongly, we were talking about what does it say to sort of fund new Christmas lights in a year of COVID. And some of you have commented on how applications, you like that applications specifically reference COVID. How are you feeling, to Michelle's earlier point, about what role should COVID response be playing in our choices this year?
Call out
I'm
names.
actually thinking, sorry, Yvonne,
No,
you go ahead.
please think.
I thought we answered this at the get-go, right? Like I thought we talked a little bit about that. You know, everyone had a bit of had some sort of COVID slant to their application. Yes, the
Except for Light Up Bowen.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I sit on the fence with Light Up Bowen because I recognize what it brings to the community. My only piece with them for this year was that there was some elements that were not clear with what they were going to do with the money, except add to what they already have. So I'm like, we don't need to do that right now.
Exactly.
And really, you know, we're not going to be allowed to have big ticket groups until there's a vaccine. That means that the whole structure of this is going to be completely different for this year, no matter how it gets framed. They've been very, very clear on that. So I think how they can do what they've done can be smaller, but still lit up. So I don't know that they need all of this extra money when they already have the infrastructure. Yes, they might struggle with volunteers, but that might be alleviated knowing that it's not going to be a big ticket thing this year. It's just about setting up lights or whatever. There's so much we just don't know, except the fact that it's not going to be a big grand shmishmish.
Yeah. Anyone else?
It's
Sorry,
a question whether we.
Go ahead.
It's a question whether we fund it at all. I think Andrea is proposing that we don't, and I don't know if we can have a show of funds or hands that show that we fund it in some level.
Well, yeah, I get maybe, but I guess what I'm wondering about is, I guess I'm wondering, I'm trying to imagine where I can't articulate it, where the COVID component is. Like, it seems to me getting a health, we talk about getting a health center up or having Caring Circle there and responding to people's psychological and physical needs, and everyone gets that. But, versus, yeah, a brochure, you know, a website or Christmas lights. It's hard. I think we've all, I've realized that we all have really different perspectives, like really valid perspectives on what COVID response is, I guess. That's what I'm trying to awkwardly say.
I think you have to remember, Andrea, that this is where I'm gonna jump in to try and save them a little bit. The whole element, when we talk about mental health and dealing with the stress and the anxiety that this is creating for everyone, there is something to be said around the beauty of Christmas lights or fireworks or something where people get a sense of joy, brightness, lightness.
But we have Christmas lights.
I get that, but I'm saying that if I'm not suggesting that they look to add to that, but if they need that extra money to help to actually put stuff up because they're struggling with volunteers, that to me it would make a difference. And having light up the cove, especially at Christmas because it's the darkest time of the year, will add some sense of relief and will provide some mental health support for a number of different people that really count on that to help lift them through.
And Yvonne, you're reading that into the application, right? That's not in the application.
I know it's not in the application because those guys don't write from that framework. But if you're asking how is that a COVID response?
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
Right? I'm going to say it does. I mean, you know, my area of expertise is mental health. I'm a clinician. So yeah. I recognize that there are some of these finer points that really do make a difference for people when everything else seems to be so up in the air. When there's an element of something that can make them smile, can make them remember, you know, better days, and especially when it is the darkest time of the year. For many people, Christmas is a super hard time of the year for them just because it's Christmas.
But it's going to happen anyway.
No, I get that, but I also recognize that they may need a little bit of something to help actually put the lights up. If they don't have sponsorship, if they've got limited volunteers, and they need to have some sort of something to be able to actually get the lights up, a little bit of something, a little bit of something. I'm just saying, but I'm just one.
You're reading that into the application too, though, I'm afraid. It wasn't requested. Yeah, I know, it's okay.
I'm totally in support of what Yvonne's saying. I think they were clear. They showed their expenses, where the money went last year. And like, I've done the Christmas tree festival for many years, not recently, and it takes so much time. Yvonne could probably know, like she can say with the Little Red Church, like so much time to put up Christmas lights. So, you know, untangle them and get them up. It's not a pleasant job. And so if it comes to supporting them and paying salaries for 2 people to do that work, then I'm all for it, because it does bring joy.
Okay.
And
Michelle and Michael, do you want to wade in? And then we've gone through 3 in effect. We can say we've got almost halfway.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Last word on the lights.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle on this one. I kind of feel like we don't need to pay them to do a really big event. I think Yvonne's making some really good points when she says that, you know, we're not going to have big events. So the big opening night parade and all that, so it's not even going to happen. And it sure would have been nice if they had addressed that in their application and said, you know, it's a quickly shifting scene right now, and we don't know what's going to happen. It probably will be really different from last year, but instead they're like, let's make it bigger and better than last year, which means to me they weren't really thinking very carefully about where we are. So I think that's a real thumbs down on that. At the same time, I appreciate the fact that the lights are, they can be cheering and make a difference when people are in the dark and after a really hard year. And ever there's no arguing that this is going to be the hardest year that anyone remembers for a long time. So I think that if we can facilitate the event going on in some capacity, I would, but I don't think it should be funded anywhere near their request.
Michelle, I'm just going to echo everything that you've said, and so I won't say any more. I'm completely aligned. Just everything that you've said, yeah, tick.
Everything that who said, Michael? Sorry?
That Michelle just said there.
Okay.
I think she nailed it. I think Michelle nailed it, and I'm in agreement.
Okay. Everybody, let's wrap it there. 3 down, 4 to go, and then we'll get back into we'll come back and assess them all together against the pot of money. Okay. Thanks for
So we
your
got Wednesday
time.
at 3 p.m. I'll be sending you a new link.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks
so much
thanks,
for your
everybody.
time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.